Hi, Sandra. This is Rachel.
Hi, Rachel. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi, Pedro. It's nice to see you.
Good morning. Today's an office day for me, so I'm coming to you from the workplace, as it were. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I know you don't have the same background. I was taken aback. I was like, where are you?
Yeah, that happens when you got to go back to the office, but it may not be for long, so.
Yeah, I know. This is a
Mhm.
interesting turn.
Sure is.
Yeah, Scarborough has already said no more meetings in person. They'll make another decision around January 14th.
It's nice to see that when we have the capability, why not just do it? I feel like sometimes
Yep.
why not put in those measures? I don't know. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you could.
I think I have two more people that are supposed to sign on, so hopefully they'll pop on too. It's not a very big group, it's pretty small. We just for a long time I've been trying to get people to join, and it has just taken a long. Not a lot of people want to do committees right now, I guess. So. Give it another minute. And then my plan for today, I only have a 40-minute Zoom because that's all our account has for Zoom. But did want to just do kind of a brief intro of everybody, get to know each other. And then if we're able to, if everyone's in consensus to vote on which platform we will use, either via remote, hybrid, or in person, to kind of codify that today, because we're in an executive order, state of an emergency still at the county level, so we can still kind of do that this way. Otherwise, we'll have to all come in for some odd reason and make that vote. So I'd just like to take advantage of that if we can right now, if everyone's willing anyway. So that's my main goal today. And figuring out a schedule too, I think, for everyone that will work and well. Hey, Liz. All right. So Travis, Courtney. Hey. And I don't see Catherine, but I think she might be popping on. So I think what I'd like to do, because time is limited, we'll just kind of get started for right now. Al, you're just signing on, but I was telling everybody, and Liz and Travis, you know, today's meeting will be somewhat brief because we're sort of limited on the time cap that we have with Zoom, but also, you know, we'll have many more meetings. And I think that this one was just for me to be able to just do a brief intro, meet and greet of everyone, and then vote on the platform we're going to meet on. So whether it be remote, in person, or hybrid. And then really that's the goal, like what schedule we can kind of have moving forward. And then from afterwards, we'll do more intro to ARPA type stuff, what it is we're doing, our goals, and then an overview of the applications that we've received so far. So I'll probably send out like a packet to everyone after this meeting that has all of the, I did a summary. So I'll send out the summary sheet. And if you want any of the applications sent to you, I can do that. Most of them are just summaries. So it's not a full application. You might have questions that just aren't answered yet in the summary, but happy to do that. You just tell me which ones you want. There's just a lot. So I don't know if I can even send that the whole thing. It's probably a big zip file or many zip files, but totally willing to do it. Just let me know. So what I'd like to do is just do a round robin of everybody. So most of you already know who I am. I'm Sandy Warren. I'm the compliance and audit manager for the county, and I'm administering the ARPA funds. Liz, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Blackwell Moore, and I am the public health manager here at Cumberland County, and I am fairly new to the role. It's been, the role was created and I've been in it for about 3 months. So happy to be here and looking forward to this process with you all.
One great thing about Liz is she's a little bit more integrated in our community in terms of like public health and those measures. So she's a very good affiliate to have on our committee and understanding of what's really going on kind of on the ground level of things too. Courtney, do you want to go next?
Courtney Kemp. I am the Community Development Coordinator for Cumberland County. I too am very new, just shy of 2 months. So I am also looking forward to working with all of you guys. Thanks, Sandy.
Catherine, would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Catherine Cahoon, and I'm the Admin and Special Projects Coordinator for Cumberland County. I think, let's see, I've been here for about 6 months, so a little less new than some.
And Catherine has a really extensive background too in grant management and particularly with water and wastewater from her time in Vermont.
Yeah, I'll add, yeah, I'm from Vermont. So I used to work for the Vermont Clean Water and Drinking Water Loan Fund as their compliance auditor. So ask me anything about water if you have any questions.
Travis?
Sure. Thanks for volunteering, everybody. I'm Travis Kennedy. I'm the county's Director of Public Affairs. I'm apparently the old man in the room. I've worked here for 4.5 years now. I'm the county's liaison to state and federal government, to regional partners, and I work on major projects and regional collaborations. So we're thrilled to have you all here. It's exciting to be, I think, creating some sustained permanent regional change with these funds. So thank you all for joining us.
John, would you like to introduce yourself? John?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear.
No worries.
That's okay. Good morning. I'm John Crimmins. I'm the, I currently sit as a trustee at the Cross Insurance Arena, so a little bit familiar with how the county apparatus works, but was excited to learn about this opportunity and take part in trying to make sure that we utilize these funds the best way we possibly can. In my other role, or my daytime role, I work for Maine Health as a complaint and safety specialist at Maine Behavioral Health Care, and I've been there about coming up on 19 years, I guess, so a little while. Thank you.
I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. Rachel?
Hi there, I'm Rachel Hendrickson. I am from Scarborough. I'm the chair of the planning committee, planning board, and also on the Parks and Conservation Land Board. I've been on the Conservation Commission, and I seem to be a perpetual volunteer for things like this. I retired after 20 years at the National Education Association down in DC, where I first coordinated their higher education programs, then moved into field operations and retired as the coordinator of field operations for the NEA. One of the things that actually involved was in developing a funding process for all of our affiliates. The budget of the National NEA is about $500 million a year. And field ops was 113 million of that. And we assisted a lot of affiliates and did a lot of did evaluation of their work and their use of funding. So when I saw this application come up, this opportunity, I thought that was a place where I could contribute. Thank you.
Thank you. Al? Palmer?
Hi, I'm Al Palmer. I'm a civil engineer. I work at Goral Palmer in South Portland. frequently get to see Rachel on Monday nights in Scarborough. We currently live in Cape Elizabeth. We moved back to Maine 2 years ago. I spent the previous 6 years at our Virginia office outside of Fredericksburg, Virginia, doing development work. Prior to that, we lived in Gray for about 30 years. I'm on the Cape Elizabeth Planning Board and had previously been on the Gray Planning Board and the Gray School Board. And having lived in Virginia for 6 years, which is a very different county government-led base for providing municipal services, this was a very interesting committee because from what we saw in Virginia, there was significant benefit in fostering county government and mitigating tax increases. So that was what prompted me to volunteer.
Thank you. And Pedro?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Pedro A. Vasquez. I am a community leader and organizer in South Portland. Currently, I'm the chair of the South Portland Human Rights Commission. I do a great number of things, including providing what I call STREAM education. So that's science, tech, engineering, reading, art, and math to historically marginalized and essentially left out populations. Professionally, I represent people living with disabilities in federal court. But as I said, I do a great number of things. And I'm really thrilled to be part of this group. I have been doing some deep diving into participatory grant making lately and on a global scale and what that means in different settings. So I'm really delighted to be here. Thanks for the invite.
So I just want to take a second to thank everyone for participating. I know that some of the newbies and kind of got wrapped into it, but for everyone else, I really appreciate your time. And I think that we have a great group that we're made up of. Everyone has kind of a knowledge and a history behind them, whether it be education or behavioral health to development. So I think we've got some great key partners that's going to help us make these tough decisions and help us look at this with a lens from one that has a sort of a different view, I think, than most grants look at, which is to start with like equity and to be very fair and how we can help the community in a way that really targets people that have been disproportionately affected by COVID. And that's what ARPA wants us to do. That's what Treasury wants us to do. And so that's really the kind of push that we need to have for the committee and the role that we need to take and look at that and examine that with everything that we do. So what I'd like to do because of time is to kind of skip to try to figure out what the best meeting times would be for everybody, kind of look at creating a schedule and then also voting on how we would like to meet. So what would be, and this could be like anyone can speak up, but what would be the best meeting schedule for everyone? Does during the day work well for everybody? Is that something that universally will be okay? Or should we do a mix of during the day and evening? Should it be a set day of like every Tuesday? And I should probably preface all of this, and I apologize with, there's going to be a lot of meetings that are going to need to be had upcoming. We have the pre-applications that were submitted by everyone November 15th. And so we have all of those, and we're looking to launch software that will allow applicants to then submit the application via software system, which I'm going to be working with the software system too to try to see if we can have all of our committee members go in and actually score them in that system. And then it will create sort of like everyone's individual scorecards will be kind of done out for us as you're going along and reading them and scoring them. And then we'll be able to compare those scores at the end of the day too, which to me sounds amazing and great because it kind of streamlines everything and you don't need one scorecard for, 99 applications that you're submitting to me. So that should be a really helpful tool, but that is going to launch on January 6th. And so once we close that, which will be January 20th. We're only gonna open that up for a 2-week window for people to go in and actually answer those questions and provide us the documentation. My goal is on December 30th to send everyone a checklist of what's going to be required in the application and provide them with the sample questions that will be asked of them ahead of time. So it'll give them some time to work on that independently before the portal opens, when they can go in and submit it. So with that said, after the 20th of January, we'll have those to be able to review. But I think it would be very important for us to meet before that, just to kind of have a longer meeting that might take an hour, hour and a half of just informative processes of what ARPA really is, what the goal of ARPA has been throughout this whole span, what we've used the ARPA for to date in terms of internal processes that have happened with the round one, how we kind of came to this 10 million, or excuse me, 11 million that we're providing out to the community. And then the future money that we'll be getting in May and how that'll look, and what role the committee can kind of be and take part in terms of distributing those funds, what that might look like. Because you could help me change this whole process around. If this doesn't work and isn't the right method or format that we should be using, then by all means, that's what we want. We want input. So let us know how this is working. And I think we've got to kind of sometimes do things out before we realize, okay, this didn't work or this worked, or maybe we need to fix things and, you know, set certain dollar amounts aside for specific things. So that's where I'd like to kind of take the time to look at, okay, we're going to have a lot of meetings coming up in January and probably in February. And how is that going to look for us and for everyone's schedule? Would that work to meet, you know, have it on the books that we're going to meet once a week or every 2 weeks to discuss applications, because it's a lot of information that we're going to be throwing out. What does everyone think?
I can make Tuesdays at 11 work if that works.
I would prefer a set day as opposed to a moving target. And Tuesdays at this time do work for me.
Yeah, I'm retired, so I've got a lot of flexibility, but I have scattered meetings or appointments here and there. Tuesdays work for me. Monday afternoon onward generally doesn't. If we start looking at other things, and then the first Friday of every month doesn't. That's the long range planning committee in Scarborough. So I've got good flexibility. So I can rearrange some things if it would be helpful to other people.
Pedro, how does that sound to you?
So I'm fortunate that I pretty much run my own show, so I can adapt to whatever's good for the group. And Tuesday at 11 sounds like the leading contender, so I'm down for that.
Okay. So I'm just taking notes. Sorry, Tuesdays 11 would be great. Is that also okay with the staff on the call? I should ask you guys. Excellent. Okay, so every Tuesday, and how would we like to meet? What's the best platform that everyone feels comfortable? Do we want to do, the 3 options, of course, would be in-person, remote, or hybrid, which would be a staff person like myself would be present on site in the building, and I would be projecting remotely our meetings and allowing both virtual and in person. So if you wanted to come in, you could. Or we could just strictly do remote.
Yeah, I think the hybrid model gives us the most flexibility. You know, I would assume that most people would be remote if we were in a hybrid situation, but it does also give us the ability, if we need to be or want to be in you know, with you in your office or in the county offices, then that would seem to be the best option. That's what I would support.
Yeah, I think hybrid works. I can certainly try and come in, but there are going to be times in January and February where it's going to be better to do remote. I think what would be a little more important for me is knowing that we have access to some sort of a Dropbox so that we have all of the material in there and can review it at other times so we can come really prepared for the meeting and make the most. If we've got a meeting at 11, that tends to mean that we're done at 12. But from what you're saying, we've got a lot of work to do, so we've got a lot of homework to do. So more flexibility we have in getting our homework done, the more efficient those meetings will be.
Dropbox, would a Google Drive also work, or just or preferably a Dropbox? Totally fine.
I think a Dropbox, my AOL, Google does not like anything that is not a Gmail. I have a Gmail, which I try to keep private. If that's the only option, then I'll try that, because from experience, I've learned that Google puts up a lot of barriers to other email accounts.
I can do Dropbox.
So I
Hybrid
would
works
also,
for me.
yeah, so I would also be in support of hybrid. I think that provides the most flexibility, particularly so we don't really know what the next, 6 months look like. I think that's the one that I would support the most. And some sort of file sharing makes a lot of sense, whether it be Dropbox or whatever it is.
I was just gonna add that I think things are looking like they're going to be really not great in January in terms of COVID rates. And so hybrid works fine. It gives us the option to say, I think we should really go virtual if in January, if there comes a point where I think we'll know more after the holiday, like what it's really going to look like. I'm concerned about people generally getting together, even with masks, until we know more. So hybrid would work because it gives us the flexibility.
Excellent. So to make it official, we'll need to do a roll call. So I'm going to call the members' names, and if you could just, so the motion is going to be to vote for a hybrid model format for all of the ARPA Advisory Committee meetings. So I'm going to start with, let me see. Catherine, I'm going to start with you. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes. Yes.
Courtney,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes,
John,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Travis.
I'm not a voting member.
Oh, shoot, sorry. And I also forgot Travis on a bunch of our emails, so I, and Pedro.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So, all right, motion approved, and we need a first and a second.
First.
second,
Thank you very much. So motion approved for hybrid model. And bear with me, folks, my Robert rules are a little rusty. So if I forget something or do something wrong, please let me know so I don't make a mistake. Always happy for the education and info on that. Okay, so hybrid approved, excellent. Taking notes. I know I probably don't have to because this is actually recorded now. All right, so we have a few more minutes. Do we want to, I can either start a slideshow presentation that I made, which goes over ARPA, or we could just answer kind of any general questions that you have right now, or how would you like me to move forward? What are you guys thinking?
How long is this? Oh, I'm sorry, Rachel.
no, I was just wondering where we can find, I took a look at the website, Cumberland County, and I did find a bunch of information on there about ARPA. In some cases, it appeared to be very general, the whole of ARPA. Is there a subdivision of the grants that we're going to be looking at and where can we find those regulations?
So very good question. So I'm sharing my screen with everybody. So I'm going to just kind of pop in or have this slide show up that I was going to present, and I'll just be a little bit informal about it. So there are regulations and stipulations attached to the ARPA funding. So we have an interim final rule, which is literally the federal rule. So you can read it, but it's a little tricky because it can get really dry very quickly. But that's where we're pulling all of our rules and regulations from, in addition to the uniform guidance. So part 2 CFR 200 is basically the kind of cornerstone of all your grant programming. So this is kind of dictating to you your administrative components of everything you do. So what we'll need to have in terms of financial documentation, or what will be required of people to maintain and show records later on of what they did, how they did it, kind of outlines your management and compliance process that should be in place. And then from there, we take our interim final rule and kind of put it in where we need to, and then layer on top of that the compliance and reporting that Treasury has provided to us. So we'll utilize all three of those platforms essentially and documentation to help us interpret what is eligible, isn't eligible, and then how we can implement it in real life, essentially. So I can send you this slide too if you want to look it over. A good one to look at, guys, would be the compliance and reporting documentation that Treasury put out, because it does kind of narrow down that interim final rule and gives you a snapshot of everything that the county is going to be required to do. So some of it you don't need to kind of worry about memorizing, but we'll kind of show you what whatever we're required to do, we're going to have to put onto those subrecipients. So they're going to have to be able to also show that they can do that. And all of these are hyperlinked, so I can send you the PowerPoint and you can click on it and it'll open that up for you. So I'll just kind of go into this. So essentially what happened is back in March of 2021, we received, the American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law, and it established the Coronavirus State Physical Recovery Fund and the Local Recovery Fund. So those two sections of the Code of Regulations combined make technically 602 and 603 make up the SLRF program that we're administering here at the county. So these are intended to support state and local governments in responding to economic and public health impacts of COVID-19. So the biggest thing is that whatever we fund or do has to be connected to or in response to an impact of COVID. So we have to identify how is that particular service or program impacted? How did they identify that need? And then how are they using their service to then make that need whole again or help or create a better situation from that? Specific to public health and negative impacts. Water, sewer infrastructure have a couple of other caveats to them, but they're not, don't really have to be linked to COVID-19, for example, not in the way that public health and negative impacts do. So right out of the gate, once we received word that we would receive funding, Travis and the initial team of ARPA folks got together, held a lot of meetings. And actually, Travis, would you mind speaking about what you did in the past? Is he still on?
He's on, but he's muted.
Oh, is he muted?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'd be happy to, Sandy. I think we're kind of up against time for today, and it might make sense for us to dive a little bit more into how we got here at our next meeting. I will just quickly explain why I'm a non-voting member, and it's because I was sort of managing our ARPA response in the early going, and I've given some advice to some partners who have ended up applying. So I felt conflicted in being a voting member, but I'm going to help Sandy out in the staffing capacity. And I'd be happy to talk more about how we get to where we are at our next meeting.
So we'll touch more on that, but essentially once we received all those funds, this is where the $11 million that we're looking at today is coming from. So we do have eligible activities, or what I would call buckets of funding. So we can fund and support public health, address negative impacts of COVID-19, replace public sector revenue loss. There's a caveat about premium pay for essential workers, and Treasury is very specific as to what an essential worker is. And we can provide funds to water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And again, these are our core categories, or statutory kind of regulations, but within them, we'll be looking at eligible expenditures and how that lays out in the community. And what we would need for compliance in terms of broadband. What does that really mean to put in broadband? And there's specific rules around that, as well as sewer and water, which we won't touch on today, but we'll touch on later. There are items that are explicitly said, no, you're not going to be able to do this, which would be reducing your taxes and all of these other components, debt servicing, rainy day funds, infrastructure outside of water, sewer, and broadband, or revenue loss. So it does say that, but there are some caveats to that infrastructure. So you could do housing, for example, as long as it was meeting a need for public health or addressing a negative impact. So even though it says it's not allowed, there's some wiggle room or gray area with that, depending on how we fund a project. So the county established goals, and again, we'll kind of go over that at another time, a little bit more in depth. But here's this kind of the basis of that, which we have tiers to start off with. So tier 1 and 2 would be projects and programs that have the most immediate impact and are shovel ready. So shovel ready is they're pretty much ready to go. They have all of their permits, they have everything. They're going to break ground, or they can purchase that land today using ARPA, and then we'll be able to break ground in 6 months by getting the ARPA funds to acquire their land, that kind of thing. Or the program's up and running and administered by a social service provider, for example, and we're just adding funding to that budget so they can either hire more staff to meet the need, or to increase hours, for example, to address the need. Something like that would be another way of saying shovel ready. Tier 3 and 4 projects are projects that are highly important, but may not be as urgent as others. And so we would look at those projects, and those would be more of like your medium term projects, things that are going to happen in the future that will happen in 6 months and be done by 8 months, versus tier 4, which would be projects that are going to take a very long time, might not have any of the development kind of components that you would be looking for in terms of your planning process approved, tax credit funded in the bag, right? QAP approved, that kind of thing. And then in addition to goals, we also, receiving the 100 applicants, we thought, okay, we need to come up with not just goals, but priorities for those goals. So there's a lot of programs that might be shovel ready, but how do we make sure that the most important ones are going to come to the top? And so the county commissioners decided, well, let's put some extra priorities on those and say that shovel ready housing and homeless services, such as unit capacity gain, so like building units that will help house people, should be really important to us in our community, because that's a very big need. And then second to that would be mental health and substance abuse services and capacity building there. And that specifically would be something like, helping create more beds and providing services to people with substance abuse that can house them or treat them, that kind of thing, and provide them some support that they need, which again is an area that's needed in the county, but we don't really have as many buildings to actually house people to provide them that substance abuse benefit and treatment. Sorry, that's what I mean, better word. And then third, new American job training and work opportunities. We also thought was a very important component of our community and need, but should probably, and these of course are just priorities that we are given as a guide, but if we find that as a committee, listen, we need to fund this because right now this is what we need today, that's going to benefit in 6 months, for example, we can look at that. Food insecurity is next, because that seems to be covered somewhat. There's a large amount of food being provided from USDA. There's other components to food insecurity that are being met right now, and maybe long-term, there's a project we could fund later on that would help with food insecurity. Or again, maybe we find that after reviewing the applications and meeting with folks, that food insecurity actually is a really big need, but it's this particular part of food insecurity that we need to fund, which is fine too. Followed by childcare and infrastructure, water, sewer. And the priorities in terms of having infrastructure kind of at the bottom was looking at other funding sources too. What else might come about? The Build Back Better plan does have funding for infrastructure and sewer and water. So that might be something that potentially we do later on, but there could be other avenues to fund it. So we think about that too when we're looking at all of the applications and all the priorities and goals that we have, is what other source of funding is out there that might meet that need sooner or pair well with ARPA. Maybe they can use some other funding source now, and then ARPA is the long haul kind of funding source for, well, not long haul, but in 3 months when those funds run out kind of deal. And then of course we'll have a scoring criteria for our application, and this is sort of lined out for everybody as to how we feel the application should be scored. And we'll get into a little more detail on that too, and really kind of cover in more depth what those 10 items are, what they look like in terms of questions that are asked of people, and how to rank them and score them. And that's where I'll want feedback from the committee too, as to how should this roll out in terms of questions asked of an applicant, and what would be the best scoring number to attach to each one, which I'll kind of come up with a base template of that. And if we feel that's okay, great. If not, we can kind of work that around too. For example, if we felt like equity should be scored like 15% at 15 points versus, evidence of sustainability could be 5, something like that would be fine. And then of course we were talking about the timeline earlier. This is an example of our timeline that currently is how I'd like to have things roll out, but could change, could vary. So we're meeting today, and then again, like I had mentioned, on December 30th, I'm going to give all of the applicants their checklist of what they need to provide in terms of uploading documents. So if it's a housing project, the pro forma, any tax credit, QAP stuff that we might want to have as part of the application. Everyone will have to have a budget, those kinds of things that we're going to want to have attached to applications, so we can fully see the need and what they have for funding already. And then from there, opening the application portal and then closing it. And we're hoping to try to review all of those applications and score them by and make recommendations to the county commissioners by February 28th. And then have that be a second read and approval by them for the March 15th meeting for the commissioners. Of course, if we get into it and we are like, hey, we need to push this back a little bit, or we need more time, then we can certainly do that. But this is kind of the mock timeline for right now as to how we'd like to have things rolled out. But everyone understands it's a big task that we have at hand. And so there's no pressure from the commissioners. They want us to do the right thing and make the right decision. So of course, they don't want us to take 6 months, but if they need to extend it a couple of weeks, they'd be perfectly fine with that. So that is my quick run through. Does anyone have any questions or anything else I can answer right now about the quick slideshow we just went over?
Could you go back a slide?
1 second. This one?
Yeah. Do the applicants get a 1 or 2 line description about what each means? Okay, because as I was looking at some of those, the one I think might be difficult to wrangle with is the term equity, because that is taken on so many meanings. And it certainly would help me if I had an understanding of what the commissioners had in mind when they're talking about equity. Is that among the community? Is that among populations? Just helpful. The more the applicants understand about what we're looking for, the better the quality of the applications coming in, and the easier it is for us to judge whether they have actually met the criteria.
Yes. So what I'll do, Rachel, is I'll create a Dropbox and I'll show you the, essentially like the first 8 pages of the application kind of outline what the program is and what we're expecting. And I have descriptions within that application of what the scoring application is. So if you want to take a look at it, and if there's something, and anybody too, if there's something that you're like, oh, this, Sandy, put it this way, make it say this way, or, you know, it would be better if we identified it in this manner, it's easier to understand, that kind of thing, let me know. Happy to change it. And now's a great time to do that, where we're kind of setting up the portal, and I can get the software folks to kind of put all that info in. So I will do that. So you can take a look and just review that info. So we have.
Could we also get this slide deck for reference?
Yeah, as long as you promise not to share it with Bill Mann, Pedro.
Absolutely. No, you know me, I'm good in terms of discretion, so no worries.
I'm totally kidding. I'm just joking. You could absolutely share it with him. I would just rather him ask me for it, you know. But thank you.
Sandy,
Absolutely.
One other question. I think you referenced earlier that there were approximately 100 applications, and yet, and this says applications due, or the application process, the initial application process, that's been closed, correct?
Yes. Yep. November 15th, we closed it. Yep.
Okay. So the application process that we're talking about here for January 6th, that's only within those 100 applications.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Catherine, you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Sandy. I'm sorry, my video keeps cutting out, so that's why I have it turned off. I just wanted to also add that Travis and Sandy made a really great website on our, that's underneath the Cumberland County's webpage that has ARPA resources. And if you're curious at all, just feel free to go and check it out, because they put a lot of time and effort into it, and it might answer a lot of questions. So that's it. I just wanted to add that.
Liz?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, there were 100 pre-applications, but I think with people now knowing that there was $88 million worth of requests for $11 million worth of, money, that there's $11 million, and then having that, more focused list of priorities from the commissioners. I mean, I think we suspect that we won't have 100 full applications, that when it comes time to the full applications, there'll be people who pull themselves out of doing the work of applying for the full. Is that correct, Sandy? Don't we think that pretty much?
Yep, I would too. And I think, yes, I think that once people see the actual questions and what's required of them, I think things will change. I think there's a perspective that ARPA is like this free, wild west money, and it's really not, right? Because it's federal funds, so it has all these regulations attached to it still, be it a little bit less stringent than others, but they're still there. And I think once people realize that, it might change a tune or two. We don't know. But yes, I agree, Liz. I think that it might, and it might just be that our process was a little bit too long for folks too. They may have found other funding sources as well by now, but yeah, we'll see how that rolls out. Okay. So I think we're closing in on the 40-minute window here. Does anyone else have any other questions? No. So what I'll do is I'll create a Dropbox and I'll throw a bunch of information in there, and also some of the stuff that we've sent out so far in terms of even the pre-application of what people have already filled in, a summary list of all of those, which is also on the website too, but I'll provide you guys one in the Dropbox as well. And then I'll schedule out meetings for the upcoming Tuesday, first, every week on a Tuesday. for the next couple of months. And actually, I'll probably just start that, if it's okay with everyone, just do bi-weekly for now. And then as we get into the thick of it, we can always switch it if that's okay. Just especially with the holidays too, that probably won't land very well, but either way, I will send that out to everyone and I appreciate all of your time today. Thank you so much. It was nice meeting everyone.
Thank you,
Um,
Sandy.
yeah, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Sandy. Have a good holiday.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Bye.